We are back and we have a big show today. Big show today. A lot of stuff's happened in the last week. A lot has happened in the last week. I don't need to be the first to tell you that. But we're going to start with the wine. So this one goes up to Mark Valin, the best sommelier in our corner of Twitter, at least. Amazing guy. He was talking about some Etna Rossos today, and I just picked up this Etna Bianco today. I really have a soft spot for a lot of Southern Italian whites. Look, I don't know if you can tell. This is such a golden yellow color. Such a golden yellow color. And it's delicious. It's delicious. It's just really, really rich. So just a little bit. I'll look crazy. So just a little bit of perspective on this grape. So Sicily is an island that in some ways is a continent unto itself. Okay. So when we talk about Sicily, we tend to think of it, oh, it's Italian. And it is Italian, but it has an enormous number of native varieties there in Sicily. And so normally for Sicilian whites, you're going to be looking at Grillo, Inzolio, and Cataretto. This one apparently is Caracante, which is a very marginal varietal. But it's from Etna, and I have to tell you guys, Etna, look, you might think, when you think of Sicily, you might think that these wines are really big, and indeed, traditionally, they had quite a bit of a legacy of being very sweet and very big in alcohol content because of that. But gain a reputation for what we call being flabby, which is when there's not enough acid on a wine and the alcohol content is too much. So it's not very pleasant to drink. I gotta tell you, that is not the case with Etna. Etna is a volcano, so you have really good volcanic soil, which can create some really interesting flavor profiles for the wine. But beyond that, Etna gives you the elevation. So this wine, Altamora, right here, this is 600 meters. This is grown on 600 meters high terrain. Okay, so that is very, very high up. It snows on Etna. All right, so don't remember when you think about latitude, they grow wine in Argentina, technically in the tropics, because they're grown in the Andes. So in Salta, Argentina, they grow at way, way high up elevation. The elevation compensates and allows you to actually get this diurnal situation so that the grapes get heat during the day, but at night the temperature drops, which allows them to preserve acidity. So anyway, it's a little wine piece for today. This is really good, though. I'm excited. Cost about $30, but it was worth it. All right. Ooh. So where are we going to start here? So first thing, wanted to point out that the narrative around COVID coming from the wet market is pretty much done now. It's pretty much obliterated. Everybody who was pushing that, it's been demolished. There is it is 2018. First off, you have people like Judy Mikovits, but even ever since Trump pulled us out of the WHO, there started to be more confessions about, well, yeah, it does look like this virus was manipulated. It does look like the virus was manipulated. And now really the question is about whether or not the virus was designed to be a weapon coming from the lab, or whether or not it was some work that was being done in the lab that somehow got leaked out. And that possibility still exists, that maybe it came into the wet market due to the conditions there as a result of but after it was manipulated in the lab. The point is that it didn't come organically from the lab. In fact, the bat in question that the coronavirus is carried in is not even like a bat that people eat. And the location of it is hundreds of miles away, if I recall correctly, in Yunnan. So whole thing is pretty ridiculous now. And, all those people who are saying, hey, there's no evidence of this. I watched a guy on Joe Rogan who said that, and he said that this stuff couldn't happen. It's like, yep. Use your mind and think. But speaking of COVID, right? Speaking of COVID, so let's talk a little bit about one of our trickster friends here in Tanzania. We've got our president in Tanzania, who very skeptical about some of the apparatus around testing and about the agenda behind this. Very skeptical, very wise guy. And he's also, I recall correctly, he is a biochemist initially by trade, something in the sciences by trade. Which is what you want, by the way. Since I think it's good to have people who are educated, who move on, educated or successful people. When I say educated, I mean like educated in the sciences. Are people who should be going into politics, is an opinion. Not Neil deGrasse Tyson, but this president of Tanzania, right? Because he's a hack, but not a real scientist. But the president of Tanzania, at any rate, again, I'm getting off topic here. He used these corona tests that he was given, and he tested a goat, a bird, and I think a couple other things. He also tested this fruit called a pawpaw. I thought it was a papaya, but it's actually a pawpaw. And guess what? They all came back positive for coronavirus, which really makes you think. When I stick a test inside of a pawpaw fruit and I get coronavirus, it really makes you think. Now, look, a couple things going on here. We're not saying I'm not making the assertion, because there's two ways. You could say that the tests are just designed to create automatically fake, are designed to make automatically fake results. You could say that, but that's the purpose, and that they just create random things, which is why people who have no symptoms are getting it. You could also make the argument that maybe the coronavirus tests have been laced, and that was asserted quite strongly, which is one of the reasons, at least a certain branch of tests that had been coming out of China were laced with coronavirus. And that's also a plausible situation here. I don't know for certain that those tests came from China, but I'm fairly certain they did, because it was like a WHO thing, and the WHO was planning out Chinese tests. So, but there's another thing here, which is that coronavirus is everywhere. And remember that the test does not test for COVID-19. It tests for coronaviruses, which coronaviruses are on every surface, right? And they're found in animals. And so couple different things, couple different possibilities going on here. But what we do know, regardless of exactly what happened with those tests, is we know that, as you just said, the numbers are very far from accurate. The numbers are bullshit in a certain sense, and which is why even some friends of mine who I appreciate it and they're very good with statistics, but garbage in, garbage out, guys. If you're getting garbage stats, you can't actually draw any conclusions with using statistics. That's just the way it is. And I think that people are starting to sense this now even more intuitively as time goes on. There's a real problem here. And speaking of all this with the distancing measures, I mean, you're not allowed to be around people. You're not allowed to be around people anymore. And that affects your immune system. They tell you to stay indoors. That affects your immune system. And actually, even having a mask over your face, from what I heard, right? I think it was in Plandemic. I think Mikovits was talking about this. But I suppose it concentrates your own sort of viral load. I don't even know if this really makes sense. But apparently, even just wearing a mask by yourself, obviously there's no point, but maybe it has a net negative because you're not allowing any sort of filtration to come through. I don't know about that, but let's just say that these measures are starting to look more and more like bullshit. And as Mark, my good friend Mark, pointed out today on Twitter, it's become the new virtue signaling. Same people who were like, coronavirus isn't a big deal, Trump's a racist for shutting down things with China, don't get masks, masks are for healthcare professionals, healthcare professionals need them, you shouldn't get them because they don't work, healthcare professionals need them, you shouldn't get them because they don't work. This kind of very interesting logic, zombie logic, right? Now they're out there telling people, shaming people, freaking out, chimping out on people right now. If they see you out there, hey, you're not wearing a mask, you're killing people. Look, I'm not anti-mask. I don't really care about that. I think it's not the hill for people to die on. I would be much happier for us to say, like, hey, let's start to reopen stuff. And sure, we'll wear masks, whatever. in certain contexts. If you want to go into a store, wear a mask. I don't care about that. It's annoying, sure, but that is not the hill to die on, guys. It's not the hill to die on. Got to understand information warfare here. You attack the points that are most vulnerable. And what's most vulnerable is that you can't go out and see other people in your family. You can't go outside. You can't go in sunny places. You can't do things that are scientifically proven to make you healthier. Let's not worry about the mask thing at the moment because it's not that important. But these people, you've got good little sycophants, good little brown shirts, and they're out there and they're trying to now guilt people. It's like the new, like, you're racist, you're sexist, you hate gay people, you don't wear masks, you want to kill people. It's a new version 4.0. And it's amazing that these people, they just swallow it hook, line, and sinker. But not much longer, guys. A couple more months, maybe. But it's all getting dismantled. It is all getting dismantled. And by the way, that's good. I mean, I know a lot of countries have been... Yeah, Australia, I know they started to backtrack on that. I don't know if that's going to continue. I heard some stuff that they were already backtracking on it in certain locales, but... I'm actually not in Poland, but from what I understand about Poland from family and friends there is that it looks like they might open up next week. It's kind of difficult to say. I'm just going to give my 2 cents here about Poland, a little digression. You may find it interesting. So Poland's ruling party is called PiS, which means PIS, which means Law and Justice, right? And was acronym for Law and Justice. Well, Ravi, Ravi, you know why they're stepping down. Andy Lack, NBC chairman, stepping down too. It's because they're all tied in with the cabal. They're the sort of henchmen that have been using these organizations. They're the criminals involved with the organization. They rose to the top. But just to finish this quick thought on Poland, this is my perspective, right? This is my perspective. I'm not Polish. And I have friends and family who both love and do not love the party. I can tell you this. If I was Polish, I would vote for PiS. And the reason for that is that PiS is a nationalist party, and they're anti the sort of global agenda. And that, to me, I mean, this may not be the case in a couple of years, but at the moment, over the last past couple of years, that was the most important consideration, because the most important thing is keeping the EU from basically overturning the autonomy of countries and sort of doing whatever the fuck they want, open borders kind of shit. This is my perspective, my opinion. However, PiS is an incompetent party. I don't even know how much I can underline how terrible they are at running things. They are really, really dumb and really, really spiteful. They're not like Orban in Hungary, right, who is really a smart strategist and really knows how to build coalitions. PiS literally will destroy things out of emotion and out of spite. And it's really frustrating that they will take something that was made by the other party that works, and they'll get rid of it just because they want to do their own thing, and they want to... It's like, if you win, we lose, right? So let's say when the criminals are removed, I'm going to be looking for PiS to evolve. Otherwise, I'm not going to vote for him. If I ever could vote for him, maybe I will in the future. But I just want that to be understood. I support them because they're the only ones who really understand the enemy, but they're not good at running the country. They're not good at running the country. So anyway, and they use a lot of low vibration stuff to try to bring up the population. But anyway, enough of that stuff. So since we're a little bit on some of this global politics stuff, guys, remember Kim Jong-un? Kim Jong-un, right? As we suspected, Kim Jong-un, alive and well. My guess is that, it was a planned hit. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but planned hit on him. And that's why you had Katie Tur putting out the report about, oh yeah, Kim Jong-un's been killed on the operating table. Meanwhile, Kim Jong-un is like not even on the operating table. He's not around there. He's left. He's disappeared for a bit. So to me, it's very much evidence of things not going according to plan. And Trump knew that. Trump's like, oh, I don't know. I think Kim's probably okay. And sure enough, that's the situation here. But all right, let's see what else we got here. Now, this is where we're going to get into a part of this talk, which is something that is a little. Look, I mentioned this in a previous Periscope. It's something that I want you to hold very, very lightly. It's weird stuff. It's weird stuff. But it's talking about clones, right? Hold it lightly. I mean, do not take this. Don't not be like, oh my God, what's Pat saying? Pat's saying this actually happened. I don't know if it happened. To me, it's really, really out there. It's among the stuff that's the most out there, and I would prefer to digest new information, so I don't try to like make it into the thing. But I've been seeing from a couple of different sources. One, which apparently has a very, very serious track record, very significant track record, that actually, and she sort of is on both the sort of truther and esoteric side of things, but she's said that actually a lot of these figures have already been killed. A lot of Cabal figures have already been killed at the top, and that what we're seeing are clones. Okay? I know. What we're seeing are clones. Hold it very lightly. I'm just going to put it out for you so you guys can think about it a bit more yourself. So the theory behind this, I'm not going to get too granular, but I'll give an example. So for instance, Clinton, the accusation is that Clinton was actually not assassinated. She was convicted and killed on February 28th, 2019. And, you know, obviously there's the usual, I heard this from some sources, right? Sources that she's in contact with. Okay, who knows, whatever about that. But what's interesting is that the next day on March 1st, Trump made a tweet about Clinton and said, bye, Twitten, but said BYE instead of BY. And so this is something that many people have interpreted as meaning that she was killed, right? They also said the same about Obama. That picture of him in Africa, that was apparently right before, and there was apparently like a marker on his hat or something that was supposed. He was shot apparently because he was brought in and then released. You know, I don't know how people know this stuff. And so that's why it's kind of like. But another interesting point in favor of the theory was that if you remember when she ran for president, she was having seizures, and that was due to Kuru, right? Merkel has the same thing. Kuru, of course, being a disease you get when you eat a dead person's brain, right? It is not good for you. So if you are somebody who likes to participate in eating people, you could get it. But one of the things, remember, actually, you know, Cernovich, right? He was talking a lot about this during the election, and with the you know, when Clinton, they got that live video from some Czech guy, got that live video of Clinton having like a seizure, right? She was having these seizures. People were saying, oh, is it Parkinson's? What is it? Well, from what I've heard, it's Kuru, which does the same things and maybe fits the symptom profile better. But of course, you wouldn't think about it because it's quite a difficult thing to get under normal circumstances. So at any rate, one of the things that was put in arguments for this is that Clinton continued to have these seizures, and it was noticed having these sort of seizures and spasms all the way through the very beginning of 2019, but starting the spring onward, when she's been seen out there, that she has not had any issues with that. And so that would indicate that she had been cloned. I heard part of her body was not destroyed and was put to Greenland, probably at one of the bases up there, and frozen. I've also heard she was frozen cryogenically. I've heard a lot of things, right? I hear a lot of crazy shit, and I have no idea what to make of it. But I think it's interesting to play around with these theories. It's possible, right? Maybe it's possible. It would certainly be mind-blowing based on what we know about things. Well, so if I'm getting glitchy, then maybe let's add a little bit more credibility to this stuff. So, and also if you look at, there's plenty of people who have made collages about her, but if you look at her pictures, I mean, there are very, very, like, a lot of the different. It's almost like there's different models, right? Well, Brandon, I'll talk about that in a second. That's kind of esoteric, but you can see that, like, the clones don't get things perfectly. They get it pretty close to being right, but they don't get things perfectly. And so, and guys, maybe an easier, maybe a more digestible possibility is it's not cloning. It's that maybe that there's just very easy to create body doubles of people. Remember, like Mission Impossible, they have that masks that people wear, right? They're the masks that people wear, and it kind of like fits to you, and they have a voice thing that allows it to modulate. So if you got someone who is the same height, right? Got someone who's the same height as you, and they were able to wear this device that, Tom Cruise can mimic all that. So you could get a body double and then have this mask with a voice modulator. So it's maybe a more digestible possibility for people who want to play around with this idea. But then you have also the Pope, and I heard Pope was recent. The Pope was taken out recently. That's what I hear. May's not a very good month for the Pope. Didn't Trump say that himself? He said that a couple months ago. He said May's not going to be a good month for the Pope. Now, some more evidence of this stuff. If you guys remember watching that feed of the Pope ostensibly giving an address, and then it just like he evaporated, and people were trying to figure that one out, how he just like seemed to disappear off the screen, like not moving slowly out into the shadows, just like gone. I've heard that it was a hologram. Remember, it wasn't in person, it was up at the top. So anyway, it's, I don't know, but it's very interesting. We're certainly seeing some very, very interesting stuff going on here. What was I going to say? There's something else here. Yeah, so I want to answer Brandon questions. But if you're a clone, what's the point of death? So, guys, you are not your body. Majestic talks about this, like, called IS-BE. So we are immortal souls inhabiting a physical body. That's what's going on. We're immortal souls inhabiting a physical body. And your body is something that, I mean, you die and you have a new one, right, later on. And maybe it's here, maybe it's elsewhere. This is my perspective. I'm also Christian, and I will maybe sometime try to reconcile that stuff for you. It's actually very easy to reconcile. But the point is that from what I understand about clones, it's a body, but they can be, you can put a soul inside the body, right? And I've also heard it can be remote kind of controlled from somebody. I don't really understand everything about this. But the point is that a clone is not necessarily as let's say human as a human, but could be if a soul decided to embody itself fully into that clone, than just using a different biological mechanism. And I've heard that things that the Cabal did is that they would create clones of people and then they just kill the clones. That was like one of their ways to kind of enjoy slaughtering things without. But it's obviously better if you can slaughter a soul if you're evil. Again, hold it all very lightly. This is a layer of stuff that it can get kind of unnecessary to go into, but some of you guys are curious, so happy to talk about it a little bit. So let's see, what else we got here? Well, why would they clone them? Well, I'm not following you. It would seem pretty intuitive, right? If you're gonna kill someone, and you want them taken off the picture because maybe they're so messed up, but you want to keep the image around, like Ginsburg, for instance, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. By the way, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. A lot of you guys maybe saw that there was a news release that Ginsburg had died, and then it was taken down. And now, as usual, Ginsburg, who nobody's seen, right? And I remember the video that was shown when she was seen, that there was massive anomalies with the video, like that the way that people were moving in front of each other didn't make sense. Like you couldn't do it. So Yeah, I mean, I actually think the gateway drug to cloning is like, is Ginsburg still alive? Like, I think that's the gateway drug, because who really believes it? I mean, who really believes that Ginsburg's still alive? Like, it's just ridiculous to even talk about. But they gotta keep the hero alive, right? Old Ginsburg working out with her 2.5 pound dumbbells in the gym. That's how Ginsburg keeps strong. Man, all this stuff about Pence. I don't know where to sit on this. I don't. Again, I hold it all lightly. I don't really care. I'm just curious. But I've heard, since you ask, I will tell you about Pence. What I've heard about him. I've heard that he was actually cabal. Indiana was a pretty big child trafficking state under his time as governor. A lot of children went missing, and I heard that there was. Well, first off, remember at George H.W. Bush's funeral, a bunch of known cabal figures like his children, like the Obamas, they all got these cards, and like everybody's noticed, like they had their faces were like appalled and freaked out and panicked when they saw these cards that they were handed at the funeral. And the suspicion was that it was, I've seen like a card put out like, he knows everything, they have everything, I'm sorry. I don't know if that's true. That sounds like a little melodramatic for my taste. But what many people have interpreted it as is that was them getting basically ratted out, right? Like they were told, like, yeah, we killed your father. I've heard that, actually. I've also heard things about H.W. Bush and McCain being executed. I don't know about that. I mean, maybe McCain, but again, there's so much shit. But I've heard that these letters were basically them being informed by, alliance that your days are numbered. But what's interesting is that Pence's wife got one. And that tipped off a lot of people to feeling that Pence was actually, he was actually on the dark side. And I also heard some other things about this. And I can tell you, I have found it really, really difficult to even get remote confirmation of this stuff, which is why I haven't taken it as seriously. But that there was some sort of situation. I'm going to mess up how I tell this. But basically, like, Air Force Two went to some place, and then like the markings on the plane, like on the flight transmitter, changed to being just like a regular aircraft. And from what I've heard, the point of all this stuff is that Pence was killed, and that what we're seeing is his clone. That's the point of all this. That Pence was killed, and what we're seeing is his clone. I don't really know if that's true or not. No one knows if that's true, except for, I guess, the people who saw it happen. But none of us on this Periscope are people who saw that stuff happen. So people have been trying to figure out if Pence is a good guy or a bad guy. I don't know. But what I do know is that it doesn't matter, because things are being taken care of and things are under control. And the truth will come out eventually, if it's necessary to come out. Maybe it's not necessary in all cases. So, yeah, the higher up people in the cabal would know for sure. So, all right, I want to move on to something else here. You guys see the JFK documentary? You guys watch that? I put that on Twitter. I don't really send a lot of that stuff out on Twitter because people don't like it, but I really felt that it was important to put out there. Exactly. Everything is a rich man's trick. And I can tell you guys that documentary was really good. It was really good. And the only thing that it kind of got wrong, and I don't blame him for this, because I'm sure they're trying to pace a lot of lefties at the moment. And perhaps the people who produced it are more on that side of the spectrum, which is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. They're still like well within the truth window, right? The right doesn't have a monopoly on truth. But they were making it very much seem like this is that the cabal is really fascist, right? And I felt like there were some implications that everyone who opposed the fascists were good. And this is just simply not true. There is overwhelming evidence about the Rothschilds bankrolling the Russian Revolution. Everything is a rich man's trick. That's what it's called. Everything is a rich man's trick. So, you know, I think the way I described it to a friend is it is really good at showing what one hand is doing. Remember, it's like the whole thing is that one hand does one thing, the other hand does the other. And so it really shows what one hand is doing very well. But the whole thing of like let's not look at the Soviets as the people who were there resisting, the tyranny of the criminals. Absolutely not the case. Absolutely not the case. Roosevelt brought British intelligence into the United States. They brought British intelligence into the United States. All of that stuff, like talking about Roosevelt, like Roosevelt was, democratically elected, he cared about America and keeping them. Come on, guys, bullshit, absolute bullshit. That documentary, that implication was really not good. But I understand it if you're trying to, because you're trying to make a message, and the message was powerful about how we did bring all of these Nazis into the United States and brought them into the intelligence agencies and learned a lot of stuff from them. And also how, more than that, but that the Nazis were almost like a branch of the cabal that was created and built up by American money. And all that's accurate. All that's accurate. I love that they put it in such detail there. I love that they put in all that detail. So, but the really good thing about it is it talks about in detail the assassination, how it occurred, the people involved with it, the cover up, and that's brilliant. It was brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. So, yeah, I recommend you guys watch it. I haven't seen anything of that quality in a while. It's almost 3.5 hours, but it's really worth it. So, we've got little aside here. So, little last couple things on COVID. Remember Dr. Liu, Pittsburgh, right? He was working on a cure for COVID, figuring out exactly how COVID worked, and he got killed, right? Murder, suicide, out of nowhere, right? The usual playbook. And what's funny is that when I saw someone on Twitter, when the news came out about this scientist working on this stuff at University of Pittsburgh, he said, "Oh man, they're going to kill him, aren't they?" And then it was a month later, he was dead. It's just absolutely hilarious. It's so predictable at this point, guys. It's so fucking predictable. And so now we have the situation with Obamagate, Spygate. Guys, Obamagate trending yesterday. Big stuff. Big stuff. And my friend just texted me right now. He's watching this. He said, "You didn't mention Obamagate yet." He mentioned that right as I was talking about Obamagate. It's like, yeah, I guess there's a little bit of a lag here. It's Dr. Liu, which is a very common Chinese name, but he's Chinese American. But I don't recall his first name. But if you look Dr. Liu, Pittsburgh suicide, you'll find the information about that. So Obamagate, it's out now. Trump's tweeting out Obamagate. Obamagate's going viral. But guys, Trump also tweeted out something on Instagram and said, it said, "Did you have fun investigating me? Now it's my turn." Right? So yeah, it's happening, guys. It's happening. I know people are like, when is it going to happen? Is it going to happen yet? How many people are still asleep? How many people are still not aware of this stuff yet? You have to be, it's coming out. It's coming out. Every movement shows it. More and more stuff every week. Now we know. What do we know since last week? What do we know now? We know that the FBI covered up. The FBI deliberately went after Flynn against the evidence that their own field agents saw there. We have evidence that it was directly political, which is why it's important you watch that JFK documentary, because that shows you the degree to which the FBI and the CIA are complicit in criminal activities. I mean, really how it works is the CIA does most of the stuff and the FBI blocks. FBI takes over investigations and sits on the evidence so that nothing can be helped. Nothing can be done. That's how they protect their own. And so this is what's happening right now. What happened with Flynn. And it's a big story. And people are like, well, when is it going to happen? What the fuck do you, like, that is big. That is a big, big, big thing, because now it is public information. People in the middle and people on the left are getting bombarded with it too. Like, what do you have people on the left trying to justify support for Biden now? Now they're like, yeah, I know he's a rapist, but we still have to beat Trump. Sorry, guys, that's not really persuasive to your average leftist about getting out there. That's not persuasive. Yeah, okay, well, maybe I believe that Joe Biden raped you, but we've got to stop Trump. You're going to get like a third of your own party to come out and vote if that's your messaging. It's not going to happen. It's not to say that they're going to vote for Trump. Most of them won't, but they won't vote, or they'll protest vote, and that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So, a lot of stuff is moving. A lot of stuff's moving, and it's starting to be promoted more and more about what was going on. And we all knew it was true. We all knew it was true. But now the evidence is incontrovertible and it's out there. And guess what, guys? Guess what? Flynn knows where the bodies are buried. Flynn knows where the bodies are buried. And Flynn's coming back to the government. Flynn is coming back to the government, and this is his arc, is that Flynn fell on a sword, and so did, by the way, in my perspective, Sessions, because they had to let this thing play out, and Trump had to be against Sessions, because it had to look like Trump didn't want it to happen. But Sessions talked about this recently, and he said, I allowed the investigation of Flynn to continue because I didn't want it to be politicized, and like Nixon did. Nixon tried to shut down the investigation, which meant that there was more that then he got to that they had cause to go after him. So the only way to do this was to have Flynn, who I know he was saying, "Oh, I was flustered in the moment." This is like the leader of like the Defense Intelligence Agency. Like, come on, that he fell on his sword and let them go after him. He gave them the most scrumptious bait, which was himself, which is honorable. Very, very honorable. He took one for the team, as you just said, Coach Pags. Took one for the team. But here's the thing. They were so hungry to go after it. They're so hungry to get it that now they're fucked. Now they're fucked. Because all of the evidence of everything that they've done is out there. And Flynn's going back in the government, and he'll be able to complete his arc and incriminate the people who incriminated him. It is bad. Yes, and that is why Obama recommended not to hire Flynn. So things are going down bigly right now. Oh, by the way, Trump-Australia connection, just a little thing about... I got a really juicy tidbit for you guys here I'm going to tell you about. But... well, there's what I'm trying to say here. There was an article about Tom Hanks being killed or dying, right? Dying. That went out in the Australian papers before it was withdrawn really quickly. That was a couple weeks ago. I think it was very end of March, maybe early April, when you were seeing all that weird stuff from him. And remember, you had Trump inside of his... How do I put this? Trump. You had Trump inside of his... No, you had Tom Hanks like doing that really awkward SNL skit, which was obviously not his house. They said, "Oh, this is my house." It wasn't. It was like kind of dismal, different countertops. We've seen pictures of his house. The current kind of thought on that is that that's his. That is his brother, who's using some sort of face thing, because his brother can mimic his voice very well. Again, don't need clones maybe in some cases, but yeah, the word on the street is that Hanks is dead. I've also heard that Hanks was part of a subcult. Hanks was actually because they put like bandanas on themselves. It's apparently not his real name. Again, hold that shit lightly. That's whatever. But I wanted to tell you about this. So some people were trying to figure out code words, because we've suspected for a while that when someone says, "I have coronavirus and I have to self-isolate," right? Like the Queen's not going to be in Buckingham Palace for the first time ever. She's self-quarantined inside Windsor Castle for the foreseeable future. Same with Queen Marguerite of Denmark, by the way. Lost that bet because I can't prove what happened to Queen Marguerite, but that's all right. It's only like $8. But some people thought that they developed some some codes to this, which I think is interesting, and you guys can play around with this if you want. So if you are self-quarantined, if they announce that someone's self-quarantined, it means that they're under house arrest. So I think we can look at Chris Cuomo staying in his basement. We can maybe say that's house arrest right there. If you are self-quarantined with coronavirus exposure, that means that you are being detained and questioned. And if they are tested negative, it means no confession going to trial. Tested positive means confessed to take execution out of public eye. Okay. I don't know. Very, very interesting. When we're done, you guys can record to the spot, and you guys can copy that stuff down if you want to. But yeah, pretty crazy stuff. I definitely know that there's some code going on. I don't know if that code is correct, but there's definitely some code under the fact that you had all these big public figures getting coronavirus. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I know people are like, "Oh, you can get tested at that level." It doesn't make any sense. People who are otherwise totally healthy, big political business figures, entertainment figures, getting coronavirus and having to self-quarantine. Sorry, guys. Doesn't make sense to me. A couple little things here left. Project Veritas, guys, remember in Michigan? A really good job by O'Keefe on that one, showing that the whole lines for people to go get tested for coronavirus, all fake, all bullshit. There's like two people who are waiting there, and the rest were all other doctors planted for the media. This stuff goes on all the time. I hope you understand. Like that stupid little stunt where you had frontline workers, holding up signs in front of protesting cars. There are heroes. There are heroes now. It's such fucking obvious propaganda. And finally someone caught it in the act where you had all his media crew around a doctor who goes up in front of a car and holds up a placard with, the mask on. And then they go and run the story. It's like doctors getting honked at by protesters. It's like the person went up there, they got the photo shot, and then he went off away out of the traffic. It's such fucking bullshit. Honestly, it gets annoying to me when I hear people at this point, like, taking that stuff seriously. Like, seriously, guys, it's so fucking obvious at this point. But what else we got here? All right. Kerry, State Department guy, pedophile, right? I think he was in charge of Kerry's team at the State Department. Turns out he's a pedophile. Go figure. Who would have thought? And also heard some interesting thing about vaccines and how they not only just have animal DNA in them, but they also have DNA from the opposite sex. Could be part of theories that could be part of the transgender thing that's been going on, is that people are getting actually injected with DNA from the opposite sex. Possible. Certainly possible. Because there's no question that it's not just a psychological thing. It's not just programming. I mean, a lot of these kids who are doing this, they almost look like they're kind of on the border between the other sex. So it's not, and we're not saying necessarily these are like XXY chromosome kids, because they've always existed. And that's a different story. Last other thing about this before we go to, there's one other thing I wanted to cover, but I just wanted to mention this with, how within the vaccines, how this was in the Plandemic film, that you have, and Loki Julianus actually back in January was noticing this about getting the flu vaccines. Those who got flu vaccines were 30% more likely to get coronavirus and to be killed by it too. It was very serious, and that's very interesting. And Judy has a very kind of mainstream scientific opinion on it, almost not mainstream, but more palatable perhaps, which is that and she was also talking about Northern Italy, for instance, which had received a new flu vaccine. And then she said that flu vaccine has bits of DNA from dogs that has coronavirus, and that's one of the reasons they were more likely to get it. I don't really know if I buy that explanation. I think Loki's is a bit better, which is that there's some contraindications between influenza and coronavirus, and maybe it lowers their immune system, or maybe there's something else in that vaccine that doesn't. I don't know. But I want to emphasize here that this is not like a full-on anti-vax thing at all. It's just that to understand that vaccines have can have things in them that are really not good for you and can have a very nefarious purpose. It doesn't mean that all vaccines are like this or need to be like this, but it should be considered to be a toolkit in immunology rather than this blanket thing. And I need not remind you that to talk about having the vaccine for coronavirus, there are no RNA-based vaccines out there. They have never been developed. There is no way to develop them that we know of. And so if you see a coronavirus vaccine out, like, oh, wow, we got to wait for the coronavirus vaccine. How do you know you can make it so fast? Because we've been working on a lot of different illnesses, RNA-based diseases on vaccines for decades, and we can't do it. HIV, we don't have a vaccine for HIV. We don't have a vaccine for Ebola. So answer me that one. And they talked about this in Plandemic. The doctor made a really good point. Is there going to be a double-blind controlled study on this vaccine? Because right now we've got the data about hydrochloroquine so fucking clear as day. 90% cure rate in the first 72 hours. Add zinc, add erythromycin, 90% cure rate on average. 89 to 95. So, all right, last thing I wanted to talk about, and then I'll take some questions. Oof, man. All right. Still good as ever, man. This wine is so fucking good. All right. There was a bill that was made in the United Kingdom back in 1984. And a lot of people were very freaked out about this bill. The bill was basically about, well, I call it a bill. It's kind of more just, I don't know what they call it in the UK. Legislation, let's just say, legislation. It's not just a bill sitting on Capitol Hill. It's just whatever Parliament says. But, so this legislation basically said that in the event of some sort of pandemic situation, of course, put out in 1984, in any sort of pandemic situation, the government would have a right to take you out of your home and make you take medicine. And if you refuse to comply, that they would put you into an institution and that they would take your children away. Now, from what I understand now, and Magenta Pixie was talking about this, and maybe it was promoted by, because people would not have known about this, but for some reason it got updated on the House of Commons website. So maybe they updated the legislation, or maybe it just got bumped up somehow that people could see it. But this was quite significant because what it basically, I mean, that's bad, right? And especially speaking of vaccinations, does that mean that they can just come and force you to get vaccinated? The understanding from what I've gotten from this is that no, they can't, but maybe it's possible that they could, if they decide to go ahead with this, that they could hold you, they could detain you unless you took it. Now, UK has really you have no civil rights in the UK. There is nothing protecting you from anything the government wants to do. There's no constitution. All laws are based on precedent. So if the judge decides that she wants to create a new precedent because it's in the interest of the state, that's all that matters. So, sorry guys, Constitution was designed as anti-cabal. Oh wait, by the way, I'm so happy I thought of this. I don't have the book with me. It's upstairs, so I'm not going to show you the title. Maybe I'll show it next time if I can remember. But you guys need to read the book by Dr. Anthony Napoleon. It's called Shadow Men. There are very, very few books, if there are probably no books that are really like this book. Dr. Anthony Napoleon worked for the cabal. He was on Twitter for a while, those who remember. Now he's pretty much rarely on there. His account is an animal rescue account. He runs an animal shelter. But he worked in naval intelligence as beyond naval intelligence, really. But he was really deep down there, and he ran psychological operations. And that book is a really, really serious disclosure piece. I mean, you will not get anything like it. You will not find anything like it from an insider. And you know he's the real deal because he's very constrained in what he can talk about, and he seeks no attention, no fame, and he actually tends to hate the common person. He has contempt for how ignorant most of us are, which isn't a good trait, but I understand it based on what he's seen and based on how he's seen people respond. That's, I think, one of the reasons he focuses on animals. I think he's kind of given up on humans. I don't recommend that. I haven't given up on humans, but I get it, Dr. Anthony. But get his book, Shadow Men. I really mean this. I bought it a couple of years ago because I didn't even know how much longer it would be allowed out in print. So really quite significant book. But one of the things he talks about in it is America, which was basically designed as an anti-cabal state built with multiple I'm getting some text on this. Built with multiple fail-safe mechanisms, right? Which is why we have the Bill of Rights. It's why we have separation of powers on multiple levels, separation federal, state, branches of Congress, executive, judicial. We have so many different, and then the worst, just in case everything really goes to shit, we have freedom of speech, but we have the Second Amendment. So America is an anti-cabal state, very, very resistant to total infiltration, which is why America is really, and I hear this from across the board. I hear it from across the board, even Europeans who are really in on this stuff. They get it. I'm not saying this is some sort of like jingoistic America, but I mean, America is where this stuff gets decided at the end of the day, because the only reason the internet is remotely free is because of the United States freedom of speech, which, by the way, we need an internet Bill of Rights because tech companies are obviously flouting the Bill of Rights because they're saying it's in electronic jurisdiction. So that's for the future, though. The point I'm trying to make here is that America was very protected by this stuff, and which is one of the reasons we were able to have Trump, because of things like the Electoral College, right? Things that people didn't like because they were undemocratic. Those are things that were designed into the system because they prevent a full-on takeover. So the reason for all that stuff about the UK is because recently, and I shit you not, guys, the last thing I'll say before I take questions, I shit you not, this House resolution was 6666. House Resolution 6666. That we should be, it's basically the same thing. I won't get into the tiny distinctions. It's basically the same thing as this UK bill. Now, it passed a House committee. I do not think it, I don't believe it passed the House. And it won't pass the Senate. It won't be signed by the president. No need to worry about it. But to give you an idea of the kind of shit that they're trying to do, and also just how fucking evil they are, because it's obviously not going to work. It's so obviously unconstitutional. But this bill gives the government the right to go into your house without a warrant and take your children away from you if you have any symptoms of coronavirus. Like, what the fuck? That's such a ridiculous law that you could even think of having it passed in America and being enforced in America. And yet, they've done it because, guys, this is what happens when you're evil. They're not, at this point, thinking rationally. They have to commit evil. They have to, it's like we're past the point of being like, oh, we're going to lurk in the shadows. They have to reveal themselves. Demons have to reveal themselves. And that's what they're doing. It's why criminals have to tell people what they've done. Because the demon that's encouraged them to commit the crime wants to be revealed. Anyway, I'll take questions. What do we got here? What are we thinking? About well, I see some things here. I'll start answering these. Oh my God, 58 new messages, guys. It wasn't updating. It wasn't updating, so I'm going to see this stuff. Who's protecting Flynn from getting assassinated? Well, you have a couple of different theories on that. But I mean, the DIA's had him. The same people who are protecting Trump. Let's just say that. The same people who are protecting Trump have been protecting Flynn. If you believe in some of the majestic things, they have air support. Let's say they have some air support. So, no need to worry. The Aussies... Your thoughts on Sessions? Is he cross dressing? Well, maybe. I don't know, guys. Look, it could be. Maybe that narrative about Sessions isn't correct. Maybe Sessions was a little taken in. I don't know about that. It doesn't resonate with me, but maybe. Fauci, yes, thank you for mentioning this. Fauci has self-quarantined. Pretty interesting, right? You would think, hey guys, you would think that, the person telling us all the protocol wouldn't get coronavirus, right? You would think that wouldn't happen. You would think that wouldn't happen. But no, we're all crazy. We're all crazy. The things that we're seeing, they're not actually happening. We're nuts. Okay. Yes. Well, the Queen Rothschilds are connected. I do want to emphasize this thing. I saw some like Jew comments in there. Uh, I mentioned this on like probably the first Periscope. I think that when you talk about the Jews, it can get a bit lazy. There's a group that infiltrated the Jews. They've been called the Khazars, but these special families are Jewish, but they don't care about the Jewish people in general. It's one of the reasons why you see Israelis are very different than sort of internationalists. Like there's let's just say that the Rothschilds cooperated with the Nazis. So put those pieces together. At the top of this dark influential class of society, well, we have, I mean, if you want to go really deep down, the reptilians are gone. That's from what I've understood. They're gone. Rothschilds are one of the families I've heard. Again, who knows for sure? I've heard there are 13 families, but then there are also 8 or 9 mixed families. And the structure was that you had sort of the reptilians, and then you had the parents who were in charge of those families, and then you had the coven, who were sort of top people within those families, and then you had, or maybe I'm mixing that up. It's parents, coven, and then I think it's the families. There's a good blog that was put out a couple of years ago, kind of introduced me to some of the esoterics around this. It's called Shane Bales, The Ruiner. The Ruiner. I think if you just type in The Ruiner blog, you should get it. But he does a lot of disclosure, but he does not reveal everything because apparently he was still working for the Cabal. He says he's one of the MK Ultra kind of kids who has very special psychic powers. You get in some really weird, ridiculous stuff when you go down this avenue. So you have to start being really discerning. But if you want to investigate it, when I first found that blog, I read it for pretty much 2 days straight. I read every single post. It was so interesting, which is a sign, by the way, guys. If you find a piece of material and you have that sort of obsessive desire to read more about it, it's generally a sign that there's truth within it. It's generally a sign there's truth within it because it's resonating with you on a very, very deep level that you didn't know about. Because remember, you have your mind, but your soul is able to interpret and understand things. So if you find a piece of material and you're like, I have to read more about this. That's a sign that there's truth in there. So don't be like, this stuff is crazy. That's programming. But just know that not everything's true. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't know that Cuomo had gotten back into the studio. I thought that they would sometimes create some sort of digital background for him. I don't know about that though. I don't really follow that level of things, to be honest. But he was certainly under house arrest for a while. If Cuomo's back, I mean, I put out a couple of weeks ago that I thought the Cuomos were flipping. I don't know if that's actually true. It's a thought. But Chris Cuomo was talking about how he hated CNN and how he kind of wanted to get out. So he's tired of saying bullshit that he didn't think was true. And so maybe he got arrested. Maybe he talked. He ratted out other people. Because let's be honest, Chris Cuomo is not like... he's involved in the corruption, but I don't get the vibe that Chris Cuomo was a pedophile. I'm just going to tell you that. I don't actually see that. I don't think Chris Cuomo is a pedophile. So, and from everything I've heard about this, is that the only people who have no real chance of redemption or sentencing is people who abuse children. If you abused or murdered children, you're done. But if you were involved in if you were involved in activities with people who did that, you can you can testify, and they'll let you get out because it's just not. I mean, it's not worth it, right? And my guess is a lot of these people didn't even really want to be a part of it. I mean, you look at Chris Cuomo seems to have some issues with his dad, right? His dad was very involved with the cabal. That's how the Cuomo's gotten the power. So he could be from like a family that's been involved with things and they couldn't get out. I mean, think about JFK. Like Joe Kennedy was involved with the cabal, and it was his sons, Robert and John, who tried to go against it. I'm not convinced about that documentary's analysis about Ted Kennedy. I think Ted Kennedy was a rat. He was at least a coward. That's for sure. He killed a woman and then they blackmailed him, so he became their darling, traitor to his family. All right, let's see here. Hey Jim, I agree with you about the virus. I'm not saying it's not a real thing. I'm just saying that things around it. I mean, in the beginning of this Periscope, right? Like, I was talking about where it actually came from. It's a real virus, but the narrative around it is still incorrect, and I don't think it. I don't really. I think I just like suffice to say, we don't really know what's going on. We don't really know what's going on with it, but we do know that being in the sunlight, being in nature, hydrochloroquine, zinc, vitamin D, and being around people. I mean, I don't think you have to be out in like crowded New York subway is good for you, but being around people is healthy. So the narrative around coronavirus is wrong, but it doesn't mean the virus is made up. It doesn't mean that it can't be really dangerous. I'm not even fully convinced it's just the flu. Some people say that. I don't even know if I go that far with it. I just think that there's a lot we don't understand about it because there have been some cases of it, what I've heard of, I know people, it's been very bad. So, yeah, so the kids being rescued through tunnels under Central Park, um, look, I saw something today on Twitter from the Q people. They were talking about Obama giving a speech at the Bilderberg. It's a fake video. I mean, we know it's a fake video. We know it's a fake video. But they're so enthusiastic, and I'm not being, I'm not, I appreciate what they're doing, but people saw, um, people saw some stuff at the Central Park things. They saw that the Central Park tents. They saw, um, I've heard about the tunnel by Alice in Wonderland statue, right? I've been actually around there a lot. There's a geocache around there. I could never find it, actually. Maybe it was in the tunnel. But let's just say that I have not heard anything convincing about kids being rescued out of tunnels in New York City. I have heard nothing convincing about it. I've seen people put out pictures saying, oh my God, look, it's a child. And I look at it, I'm like, where do you see a child? Like, this person's injured and disfigured. It's like, where do you see that? Like, I'm looking at the same picture as them. And we have this, especially if we want to believe something, people will put out this and they'll caption it, but you have to look at it. It's like, they'll say, this document says this. It's like looking at a headline. It's like looking at a headline and thinking you've read the story. Although in the case of a picture, it should be a little easier. Like, just pause and look at the picture and say, does this actually look like a child? Does it look like the headline describes? I have not really seen it. So I have heard children have been rescued. And Trump did mention about a child or a young woman being rescued on one of his press conferences. But I don't know what that really means from the standpoint of like how many. I've heard a lot of things. I've heard some crazy stuff about underground DUMBs, right? Deep underground military bases. I've heard a lot about that. And I hold it lightly because I don't know. What do I think of transgender people? I think that, I mean, honestly, I think a lot of them have been manipulated. I think the majority has been manipulated. The vast majority has been manipulated. I'd say like 80% have been manipulated by programming. That said, there is undoubtedly a solid percentage of people who are transgender who are really confused. And while I think in the cases of some of them, their transgender belief is clustered with a lot of other antisocial behavior. For instance, there's a much, much higher rate of violence among a lot of transgender people than the regular population. So, but there are transgender people who have no history of that, and they're completely normal in every other way. You can't say that there's something psychologically wrong with them. They just don't feel like they are the sex that they should be. And I don't know whether that has to do with some sort of hormonal issue. It could. I don't know. I think it's important for us to be really compassionate and understanding, while also understanding, like, this is what people don't, it's so difficult for people to understand, to live this way. But you can understand that there's programming around someone doing something, and yet not assume that the programming has to be based on something, right? So I don't like to do blanket statements about it. I think some people on the right can be really much like just making fun of them. Like, I feel bad for them, because imagine if you really felt that way yourself. Imagine how difficult it would be to live. Like, and I think that unfortunately the propaganda, the way it's operated, is that it will take that sort of sympathy that a lot of people, especially on the left, have, and it manipulates it. And so you have sympathy and empathy. There's empathy, and they say, okay, if you want to be really empathetic, you have to be tolerant. But then they shift it from tolerant to promotion, and that happens very quickly. And you saw this with homosexuality, right? Like, one of my best friends is gay. Like, but here's the thing. I'm not, it's like, I don't care. It's not like a signal, but here's the thing. It's like, he's the first to admit that there's been programming around it, right? It's not as if, I don't like this like black and white kind of thinking, like dehumanize gay people. Gay people are going to hell. Fuck gay people. Like, that's not the point here. We're not saying any of that stuff. But you can also understand that it's been used as an agenda, and the people who suffer the most are actually gay people in that, ultimately, because then they get hit with the backlash. And let's be real here, guys. The cabal doesn't care about gay people. Like, they don't care about them at all. They could give a shit less about people who have problems from that. So, let's see here. Yes, Public Health Control of Disease Act 1984 per Google. That's it. Hey man, I'm not taking the vaccine either. I'm taking no vaccine made by my Gates. Well, Drafty Jones, I do relationship advice on 2 other Periscopes every week. I do one on conspiracy, COVID cabal stuff, and I do 2 on relationships and dating. So if you want to DM me a message, I'll be happy to take it in the next one. Yeah, thank you. You guys got this. Okay, here. Blah, 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 blah. Let's see here. Collingswood bullshitter. Well, I'm not in Collingswood. Good, but good infiltrating Native Americans. All right, I'm looking through here, guys. I'm looking here. I just got a lot of comments. You know we are under martial law. We're not under martial law. We're not under martial law right now. And it's funny because, like, if Trump was really a fascist, like, no easier time to do it than right now. But no, we're opening up places. I mean, the big thing now is going to be that the left's trying to tank the economy in their states, and they're going to want Trump to have to bail them out. It's like, I don't know how it's going to turn out, but America was Babylon, is Babylon. It's also the new Atlantis. So, guys, I like to think about the future and the Space Force and where we're going. It's quite important. So Democrats are bad and Republicans are good. How? Karen, I don't know if you're still here watching this stuff, but please break out of this paradigm. And I think of all people, I'm not the one putting this out there. Right now, there are more Republicans aligned with the truth than Democrats because Trump went into the Republican Party. But I actually find this really like ironic is that the Democrats have been throughout most of the cabal's history way more aware of the bullshit than the right, or at least I would say more aware. But JFK was their guy; he was killed, and you guys were right about Bush. But remember that Trump doesn't like Bush; they don't get along. But Obama does like Bush, so it's not about left versus right; it's about criminals. It's about criminality in our government, and the big reason that a lot of the people on the left, they're not on the wrong side because they're bad people. They're on the wrong side because that's where the propaganda's been going right now. That's where the propaganda's, that's their last foothold is on your side. And the reality is that when you guys wake up to this stuff, we actually end them. Because right now, the left are the only people who are still accepting the propaganda. I include the neocons in that because they've already been effectively kicked out of the party. So you guys are great, but please wake up to the reality about this. No, I do not think that. I think they want to force a civil war revolution, but they will not force a civil war revolution because if we wanted to do that, I mean, that was what was going to happen if this plan by the Alliance DIA hadn't taken place. Because, but here's the problem if there was going to be a civil war revolution. Not only would it have been extremely costly in human life, I mean, right versus left would have happened, and millions would have died, and it would have been pointless. Families would have been divided, like the original American Civil War, which was also cabal initiated. If you look into the UK and their need for cotton, back that facilitated a lot of the divisions. There's a lot of British agents and Rothschild agents actually in the South who were helping to push separation so that they could continue slavery, which was funding the British Empire's industry. But not to get too much of a digression on that, that was brother against brother, and they would have done that again in this war. But the problem with it isn't simply that it would have been violent, it would have been bloody, and who knows if it would, and with nuclear weapons, who knows what could have happened, but also because energetically we're trying to rise above things, which is why people need to get out of the mindset of like Trump is going to fix things. It's a really big problem on the Q side. Enjoy the show, enjoy the show. Well, yeah, enjoy the show, but do your part as well. You are the show. This is us. We are part of this show. Like, it's really important. It's really, really important. We are not going to get to another level where this stuff can't happen again unless we learn agency, which is why you have people. And look, I don't know whether Austin is Q. I don't care about that. But what he does preach, and I mean that. I don't know if he's Q or not. But what he does preach is agency, and that we need to come together and we need to collectively demand release of JFK files. We need to collectively take action. That's agency. When we're like, this person's going to save things, this person's going to fix things, we are diminishing ourselves and we are opening ourselves up to a master-slave dynamic. Trump could do a lot of things right now. People are like, why hasn't it happened yet? Hey, guys, it hasn't happened because you haven't done anything, because you haven't demanded something happen. Go and demand something happen. Go tell people about what's been happening and demand action be taken. You make the difference. Don't look to Trump. Trump needs to do this. I'm upset with all this stuff. I'm going to just check out of politics. You bitch. Like, stop being a bitch. Take action. Take action, demand it, spread the message. Well, all right, guys, David Icke, Brian Rose. Look, I haven't really watched Icke. I don't remember I was telling you guys earlier about how you have a real desire to watch something that tells you whether or not you should watch it or you should read it. I don't really have a desire to watch these people, and I'm not saying that they aren't good for you guys. I want to make sure this is clear. I'm not being condescending, but point I'm trying to make is that for where I'm at, I don't really have a desire to watch what's going on with them, and I honestly I don't really trust Brian Rose's intentions, and there's something about him that reeks to me of a scammer, and I'm always very cautious of people who build their careers off of this stuff. I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying that David Icke is not providing mostly positive influence on people. He probably is, because he is waking people up. And I've heard some things that he's controlled. Same with David Wilcox. I've heard that stuff, and I don't know if it's true or not. I'm just telling you that I don't trust Brian Rose from looking at him and from hearing him. And anyway, that's just kind of it. That's kind of it. But I encourage you guys to look at them, and I'm really happy to hear people are able to follow a lot of the stuff we talk about because they've watched David Icke. Different sources being used to propagate transgender agenda. Well, I think honestly, what was it? It was David Rubin or somebody mentioned how it wasn't David Rubin. I don't know who it was, but they mentioned about how they use actually like LGB issues, and they put LGBT, but it's actually quite different issues, because one is an issue of identity versus one's really an issue of attraction. And I agree with that. I think that where is it coming from? I mean, I think that it starts with making people question masculinity, femininity. I think it's the beginning of it. If you try to say that men and women are the same, then it becomes really a matter of genitals. And I think if you really make it so that men are bad and women are good, or people want to be different, I think that you would start to see more people move in that direction. I don't think it's any. I think if you see like with transgender, there's a lot more male to female than female to male, and I think that's a function of the propaganda. So that's all I want to really say about it. I don't want to go down too much on that. All right, let's see here. Deep state confession videos. I don't know. I've heard that. Will we see deep state confession videos? We're not going to see them anytime soon because the population isn't ready for it. It would create way too much trauma and dissonance. So we're not there yet. I don't even know if we'll see that before the election. That to me is something that we might see right after the election. Once it's known, once we know pretty much what happened after the election, I could see videos being released, but I don't know the timelines and stuff. Notre Dame Cathedral fire was very clearly cabal. That was my one big regret on Twitter, is I started to make some comments about that, and I got so much like crazy nutso spam from doing that. I don't do that shit anymore as a result. I actually had to protect my account for 48 hours because it was blowing up my phone to the point where I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go on the app because everything was ruined. But there's a prophecy aspect of it, and it's a really good question, and I actually think I might look more into it, the exact reasons for it. If you guys want to look at I Pet Goat 2, which some people call it a disclosure of the cabal as like a white hat, I think it's based on knowing the director. Maybe it would be more negative, but I Pet Goat 2 was basically their plan, how they were going to go about doing things. And a key part of that plan was the Notre Dame fire, burning down the cathedral. So, yeah, it's a very sacred place. If you've been there, it's a very, very sacred place. But there's videos of people on the top in very strange outfits who were running away while the fire was being started, and they're not firefighters. So, yeah, as a friend just reminded me, that was part of another timeline. And this is why I've said for people, and I keep an open mind with this, but people who are like, Revelations was the timeline that they were going to bring about, my perspective. Maybe not. We'll see. But the timeline that they had planned is no longer operational. It's not occurring anymore. And they're just grasping to try to delay the inevitable, which is their elimination. I am a relationship and dating strategist, and I have fun doing this. Yep. PM Boris got coronavirus. He was another one who had been mentioned as a how do I put it? As being somebody who was cloned, right, and replaced. I don't know. Blah 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 blah. When we get back to real life, I don't know. In blue states, probably longer. I'm pissed off, guys. I'm spending tons of rent money on this shit. I'm not using any of it. Any athletes are CABAL? Plenty. Just trying to go through this fast, guys, because I just want to say this: reptilian impulses in us. Can you expand on the origin of this? Our DNA was modified. We've it gets to be pretty complex stuff. I'll just say there's a reason why we can't find the missing link. Apes are our base, but we have been modified heavily. Prometheus is a good disclosure on this. We've been modified heavily. I'm gonna have dinner pretty soon, so I gotta move fast here. Guys, I think I'm just gonna have to. There's so many here. I'm just gonna keep going here. Maybe I'll get one good thing. Elon's colonization of Mars. Elon's a white hat, guys. I know I made fun of his wife, but Marky Mark, I don't really do that, but if you could, you can DM me some stuff, and maybe we can set something up in the future. But I don't do this stuff, and then we're in the middle of the things. I'm sorry, I'm just seeing your stuff now. Just DM me on Twitter. Maybe we can set something up. 17 is the DIA number, and I think it is the number in the Bible of victory. 17 is the number of victory. All right, guys. I mean, I feel like just a couple left here. All right, my friends. Whoa. Braca Goldsmith on YouTube. I'll check it out. My friends. I'll see you next time.